course, we have two types of participants today. Many of us are at place, but of course, I really warm welcome our online guests too. We are delighted to have you here for this morning panel discussion, and we look forward to insightful conversation and valuable contribution for each of you. Our morning discussion is titled Supporting Warsaw, Cities and Country, a discussion panel on humanitarian aid in the times of crisis. I would like to begin by introducing our panelists. I really would like to welcome Maryna Dorosh, Senior Technical Advisor of the Learn to Discern project IREX in Ukraine. Ph.D. Greta Gober, the Managing Newsroom Diversity Project. Ph.D. Maria Kordalewska, a volunteer and coordinator at Refugee Help Center in Warsaw. And Olaf Osica, Director for Strategy and Analysis, Warsaw City. And of course, I have really good pleasure to introduce our chair of this panel session, Professor Göran Bolin, member of the Executive Board of ECREA and chair of the section Film Media and Visual Studies in Academia Europaea. Thank you very much for being here today, and of course, enjoy the panel. The floor is yours, Göran.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the honor of sharing this interesting session. I hope we can have a lively discussion about the events around the full-scale invasion by Russia in February last year, and the different takes and experiences that all in the panel has had from this occasion. I mean, in one sense, the war didn't start in 2022. It started already, and if you speak with Ukrainians, they will say that no, the war starts in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea and the sort of war in Donbass in the eastern Ukraine. However, that war also faded away a bit in the news media over time, and then we had the situation in February last year, which was preceded by a sort of a build-up of military forces around around Ukraine's border. And I know some people in Sweden, some military analysts, they say, well, we knew that this was going to happen. We just didn't know exactly when. But I think that's sort of a construction post factum that people tend to do. To most of us, this came as a surprise, even if we could see the build-up of military forces. At least the people I spoke with tended to say that, well, they will never do this. This is just sort of a rattling with arms and threats. But the war happened, the invasion happened, so I thought we could start this panel by reflecting a bit about the immediate thoughts and things that happened in late February last year. So what did you anticipate in the panel this full-scale invasion, or did you also think that this was just a sort of a threat on part of Russia, and how did you react? We can start with Olaf, if we can get the mic to work.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here. Well, you know, there is this saying that you should hope for the best and prepare for the worst, and actually we kind of assumed after New Year's Eve that the war is coming, simply. Yes. Of course, we didn't know when, and we didn't know the scale of the invasion, but we simply just assumed that because of everything what was, you know, in media, not only media, but also just through all the channels and networks we part of, we simply knew that something's going on, yes? And we assumed that, well, I mean, we have to be prepared for that. And of course, the problem is that, you know, an intrinsic feature of every crisis is that you don't know how big it's going to be, you know, what are the dimensions, yes, what is the scale, what is the speed of the crisis, yes. So this is something we were not able to prepare, but what we did, and not only because we wanted, but this is what the law obliges us to do, is to identify key resources, capacities, you know, think of how the, you know, the entire organization, and we're talking of a city of 2 million people, how can we be prepared for that? The problem was that we were not the masters of the show. So basically, I mean, if you're familiar with Polish law, according to the Bill on Crisis Management, Article 14, it's the central government competence, yes. So unlike with education, public transportation, many other, you know, policies which we do not only develop but are responsible for in the city, when it comes to crisis management, it's not us to call the shots, it's the central government, yes. And of course, the problem was, again, I'm not shifting responsibility to the government, but we know that also the government underestimated the scale of the problem when they decided to open up the border, yes, simply. They just opened up the border, which technically, it's a very simple thing to do, yes. But then the problem, of course, was that, well, when there is a lack of, you know, coordination, when, you know, 90% of trains are coming to Warsaw and not are being distributed among other cities, then of course, you know, it creates problems for us, yes. And I guess, I mean, we're going to talk about it later, I think, despite all the problems we had, I would say that, you know, compared to similar crises as we know from the history of recent years, I would say that despite all the problems and challenges, I mean, it is a success story. Yes, I mean, we managed, I mean, local authorities, NGOs, inhabitants, and the central government, yes. So, but of course, again, we thought that it's going to be that the intensity of the crisis will be lesser, and that the government would be much better in actually just anticipating just, you know, the chain of reaction, just starting from opening the border to what it means for the whole things, from infrastructure, like rail infrastructure, and the one thing which is also very important, within the first 2 or 3 weeks, we had like 300,000 of people coming to the city. So actually the number of people living in the city increased between 10 and 15% within 3 weeks, yes. And then the problem is that when it comes to rail stations infrastructure, it does not belong to us, yes. So we are actually just, I mean, local authorities, like private persons, we were actually just, you know, guests there, yes. So we were, on the one hand, everyone expected us to act because there was a crisis. On the other hand, we did not have legal instruments actually to manage this, yes? So just to start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Greta, you have been working with or researching journalists and during this period and also before. So what was your, did you notice anything, discussions among journalists? I know the focus of your research was diversity, and we can come back to that, but in terms of anticipations of the consequences of a full-scale invasion, if that would happen, so to speak, was that something that you noticed?
Well, no, to be honest, because we had particular research questions that we were pursuing in the interview. So we were talking about diversity management, and this didn't come up as a topic. We were talking about the crisis at the border with Belarus and the refugees arriving there, or people who wanted to become refugees, but they were mostly not allowed to submit the applications because, you know, you have to go through some kind of legal procedure to be considered a refugee. So that was a topic, but we didn't really talk about, or we were following the media, obviously, and there were some indications that, like you said, people trying to predict if this is going to happen or not, and mostly we were falling back on this idea that they would never dare to do it. So that came really as a shock. And I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about my own shock, but it basically influenced the project by a month, I would say, because we were like so shocked that we just stopped doing interviews and people didn't respond because we were in the midst of field work in Poland. So, of course, it was awkward to say, you know, hey, we were supposed to have an interview about diversity management, so let's talk about it. You know, when I mean, newsrooms were so stressed and there was no time for anything else. So it took like around a month and a half before we picked it up, and then we kind of changed the angle. So we didn't want to talk about only what they thought about diversity management, but also what they think about it now during this situation. Yeah.
So what did they think? If you could say something.
What did they think of
diversity during this situation? Did they have, was there any sort of common ideas that came through?
Well, we have a research paper about this, so I can talk about that at length, but maybe we could come back to this.
We can come back to this, yes.
Okay.
Maryna, you have worked with the IREX project and media literacy and things. What was your reactions and how did that affect your work? You don't hear? Okay. If I talk like this? Okay, sorry. Yeah. So I can repeat that. I mean, Maryna, you were working with the IREX project and with literacy, and how did this full-scale invasion affect your activities with this?
Good morning, everyone. Do you hear me? Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's one thing is my personal experience and perception, and another one is my work and our activities. So regarding personal experience, I can say that probably I have been among those Ukrainians who were realistically pessimistic and were anticipating the full-scale invasion. So I left Kiev on February 25th. And regarding our organization, so I work at IREX, our main office in the Washington, and we have field offices in many countries. In Ukraine, we have more than 100 staff employers, and it's a big, it's a big team. And during the first days, it was the biggest challenge is in general to move to some safer places. And after we just maybe a week moved and stayed somewhere, of course it was a question how to proceed with our projects and activities. As we work in all regions of Ukraine, my project where I work, Learn to Discern, it's media literacy project. We have more than 3,000 teachers in the project who completed trainings and teach media literacy, and also we have representatives of higher educational institutions. And I think that when we discussed this, how it's better to, in general, work in this environment, the first for us was to make an informal connection with our project participants and to ensure whether they are safe or not. And after that, we gathered some kind of requests, what can we do for them now? And one of the main requests was how to deal emotionally with all information and all news. Because basically when you teach or understand what media literacy is in the normal circumstances and when it is a threat to your life, it's absolutely like different interaction with media. And that is why we decided to do kind of the open, not lecture, but kind of the online seminar of the new rules of working with information in the wartime. And there we emphasized the importance of the emotional intelligence and importance to calm down your emotions when you receive news. And the other thing, of course, is think many times before you share something in social media, because it was time where basically sharing information about the places of attacks could help our adversary to proceed. So, but I think that during the first weeks of the invasion, we managed to engage more than 700 educators to this kind of seminar, and it was in March, so it was quite a fast reaction. Maybe I will stop here.
Yeah, but these educators, they were from the teachers for small children up to, or was it some specific type of teacher that you were?
Yeah, the majority of our teachers, they teach teenagers,
okay.
14, 15 years old, but also we have a big cohort of the instructors from the pedagogical faculties and journalism faculties who work with students. And in this, the first weeks, it also was a kind of challenge to connect especially with those who were near the front lines or already were trying to leave occupied territories.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Maria, you was engaged with NGO work immediately after the full-scale invasion. Could you tell us a bit about those experiences?
Okay, firstly I want to come back to your first question you asked,
okay.
Pavel. Actually, I wasn't prepared for the war. I had my own life, like normal life, like everyone here. I had a permanent job, my own company, I had a family, and I was on holiday with my daughter when the war started. And then I come back to Warsaw, and I spent first day on my couch in my house, and I started to think, how can I help? But in the beginning, I was lost. I didn't know what to do. How can I help? And I think that I was surprised, like everyone, and no one was prepared for that. We couldn't expect, the real war now in our time. So, but after one day, I realized that I just cannot sit like that, because the Ukrainian people are coming, and they will be in Warsaw in few days, hours, whatever. So I started to looking for some opportunity to help, and I just saw my friend on the train station in Warsaw, the main train station, and I saw that it's become a crowded place, and many refugees stay there waiting for another transport or some place to sleep, something to eat. That was horrible view, actually. And I heard that they need electricity to charge their phones, so I called to Voivod, let's say. I can't remember, but yeah, to Voivod to ask for the electricity, because the main train station is half City Hall and half Voivod, right? It's like
It's the central railway station.
Yeah.
But it's actually managed by a state-owned enterprise, which is something, again, it's like a state-controlled company.
Yeah, but if I wanted to have this electricity, I had to call to some places to ask for that, and then they asked me if I could find some volunteers for Torvar, because it's gonna be open in one day. Yeah, it starts tomorrow, that day, so they asked me to find some volunteers to help to organize this point. And maybe I will be able to find some warm things to eat, some soup, whatever. And this is how it started. And in one day, I became a volunteer without any organization, without any preparation, without like nothing. And then I lost my personal life for 6 months. Thanks God, I still have some job. And my daughter loves me a lot, so I'm lucky. But me and other volunteers, we just left everything and we started to help from next months.
But how did you organize this help? I mean, in this chaotic situation?
I have no idea. That was a miracle. Actually, everything was fine because of the internet, our communication via social media. I asked some friends on Facebook and joined the group on Facebook for the refugees. And I started looking for the people who, as me, just wanted to help and be there on time.
So basically, Facebook worked as a hub to
social media rule,
okay.
right?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Olaf, you mentioned the complexity of of organizing this with the railway station. It's a state-owned company, as you say. So, but what types of concrete measures did you have to take in order to try to organize this humanitarian aid in this situation?
Well, you know, it's a very complex situation, and as I mentioned, yes, I mean, no one was prepared for the scale and the speed of events. So basically, there was a sort of a managed improvisation, if I may put it that way. So first of all, we were responsible for, I mean, we did what we were responsible for, which is like, you know, healthcare, education. So within actually just a week, we open up, you know, especially, you know, like a sections in Warsaw, schools and also kindergartens, simply just to accept, you know, the kids. We organize our reception points and shelter points. But this is, so I mean, those of you who are not familiar with, you know, well, the Polish legal circumstances, yes, I mean, there is this local authorities part of the job, and there was also the central government. Yeah, the problem was that the central government was actually doing like the Torvar situation, which is one of the biggest shelter points, was managed by Vojevoda, and we have others. Yes, so when we have others, of course, we were much more. They were smaller, but there were many of them. Yes, so we prefer to have like just, you know, places when there's like, you know, 200 people, but there are like 10 places of that kind because it's easier to manage just to provide services than to have like a one, you know, big place with 2,000 people. Yes, I mean, so there was a different, I would say, logic in approaching the problem. Yes. Then, of course, I mean, we own, Warsaw owns, you know, 10 hospitals, so of course with all the hospitals that were organized. Then, of course, public transportation, yes, so we provided just, you know, well, public buses basically from the Warsaw transportation, just from the railway stations, bus stations, just to shelter points, yes, and they were like operating for a number of months for free. And then, of course, there was the whole thing with kind of, you know, division of labor, which was not official, with people like, you know, Maryna and NGOs. Yes, so basically we knew that we are not able just, you know, to manage the crisis on our own. So we're trying not to interfere. Actually, just, you know, if something worked, yes, so we said, okay, if it works, then that's fine. Yes, so we didn't want to have the ownership of everything. Yes, so rather trying to, you know, if not organize, then actually, you know, support, you know, all the private initiatives. Because I mean, the whole story about the refugee crisis in Warsaw is that actually it was managed by the civil society in the city. Yes, when you compare, I mean, we are very much afraid when the spring was coming. Yes, that we would see people actually just, you know, those refugees, you know, sleeping on streets, you know, putting tents in public parks. Yes, I mean, scenes which you can see from New York, San Francisco, just London, many other, you know, European capitals. Yes, nothing like that happened, and it didn't happen because those people who actually, you know, opened not only their hearts, wallets, but also flats. Yes, they let those people stay. Yes, so altogether in the heyday of the crisis, when we have like, you know, again, different estimates. Yes, but in the first 3 months of the crisis, there was like, you know, 350,000 people. in the city who were longer than 3 days, because some of them were the new were coming, the others were like going to, Germany, Italy, so Warsaw was kind of not only a hub in Poland, but it was a hub in Europe, yeah? So people were going from Przemyśl to Warsaw, and their relatives from Germany, the Netherlands, they were just coming to Warsaw actually to pick them up, yes? So, which created a hell of a traffic, yes? I mean, and the infrastructure was not ready for that, yes? But coming back to the most, I would say, important thing, which is like the shelter. I mean, over 90% of those who came to Warsaw, they found the shelters with their relatives, family members. I mean, there was a huge Ukrainian network here in the city before the war. Private persons, some of them rented, flats, on their own, yes. So it was actually just only a couple of thousands of people who ended up in our, the local, in shelters led by the city, yes, and another couple of thousands led in by Voyevoda, yes. So I guess that was kind of a unique and unlike in many other crises which you have, the situation was not that there was like us, like the city hall, the local authorities, vis-a-vis the crisis, and the inhabitants were basically pissed off, yes, why the city hall does not, provide everything, yes. It was actually us and the people of Warsaw versus the crisis, yes. So from day one, without any kind of coordination, very much, bottom up, there was this kind of, as I said, division of labor, which was never, written, stated, yes. That is like the people of Warsaw and the local authorities are on the same page, and we are together acting vis-a-vis the crisis, yes, and not actually that we have two problems, which is one is a crisis, and the other, inhabitants who say, well, where are my buses, yes, where there are so many just people on streets, yes, why can I have to resign from my basketball lessons because, the gym, is taken for the refugees, yes, so so that was again, unique in Warsaw situation.
Yeah, when you say the gym, was it also involving private corporations and
also
like
again, we have, there was like, there were like private people, there were NGOs, associations, and there was also private business, yes. Actually, just, it was easier to talk to private business in Warsaw, not the state-controlled companies, like in the case of railway station, when they said that, okay, the government opened up the border, they were sending all the trains, overwhelming majority of trains to Warsaw. But the owners, actually the management of those railway stations here Warsaw was not prepared for, such a big number of people coming, yes. And when we talk with private business, different companies here, they offered, for instance, not only help like, organizing, like basic, like staff, food, they were also, there was a big, companies, I will not name them, but they were actually getting their people from Kiev and Kharkiv actually to Warsaw to organize remote work, getting their families so they can feel, safe, and they were also giving up some, places for free, yes, so we can put refugees there, yes. So again, that was something unique, like a kind of a bottom-up social movement, including everyone, without any, like a proper, management, just, written, contracts, whatever, yes. This is how it worked, yes. And therefore, I guess, it worked so well, yes, because everyone was there.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to add that thank you for that, because that was absolutely phenomenal in Poland, and I think that only in Poland we could do it, actually, only us. But also I just want to add the small thing that you have to remember, because maybe you have a different image of volunteer, who is a volunteer with the young people or some student. Not really. Volunteer is also a businessman with the huge money. It's I don't know, the doctor, the lawyer, whatever. Volunteers are very, different people. So just remember about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Many of the refugees, since men most of the refugees were women and children, right? So in terms of educational efforts, how, there is, the literacy problem, but there's also a problem of when you get a lot of refugees that are children that eventually will need schooling. So did that affect your work, Maryna?
I think it affected, in general, educational system in Ukraine, because if to look on the data on schools or universities, the majority of teachers, they are female. And this big movement of Ukrainian population, of course, affected. But to be honest, speaking about Ukrainian education, I think the reason why it really survived, especially during the first 6 months, is in general the courage of individuals, of teachers. Because for the Ministry of Education, of course, it was a very hard challenge and unexpected challenge. I can't say that those some fast policy documents, they were really well written, especially in the beginning, and I think it's easy to understand it, because probably such a large scale of the war and of the effort nobody expected. But the reason why the online classes actually were going on and proceeding is the enthusiasm of teachers and their willingness still to be with students, with pupils. And from that kind of research which we made at IREX, we found out that teachers actually had to become, first of all, like psychologists, because pupils and higher education students, they wanted to have a space where they can discuss what is going on, and not to talk about like some academic disciplines or, I don't know, biology or math, but to discuss the situation. And here, now also in Ukraine, we provide these psychological trainings for teachers, because on the one hand, they have to deal with their own emotions and mental health, but at the same time, they need to have resources to help students to deal with this. Of course, I think it was one of the big challenges is how to study for those students who moved abroad to other countries, because some of them were trying both to study, like for example, in Poland or in other country, and also attend online classes in Ukraine, and it was kind of a huge stress. But for now, as far as I see, during like this year, more procedures and some rules in place, so it is easier than it was during the first months. And since we have this this kind of panel, I also really would like to thank Polish people for help, because from the beginning, I think that Poland set a very high standard of how the neighbor and the partner country should behave in this situation. So it was kind of the guidance to other further European countries. And I think that we Ukrainians in Ukraine, we felt that Polish people, they are like ready to share this horrible challenge with us. And we feel it now too. We do understand that everyone is tired, but also we feel that I think that Poland is that country who is ready to go with us to the end, to the victory.
Thank you, Maryna. I mean, what you're saying, Maryna, about these the commonalities that are emphasized. I mean, you were researching, Greta, diversity, which is the opposite of the commonality. So did you see some, or did you talk with your journalist informants about this fact? I mean, did this affect their work in any way to try to overcome diversities in a crisis situation, so to speak?
Yeah, so yesterday I was taking an Uber, and there was a Ukrainian woman driving this Uber, and she was telling me her story, and that she needed to, she's a single mother with 2 kids, and so she, actually 3 kids, one is fighting in the war, and so she needed to be in Poland because of the online teaching. So she said, I cannot afford to have the kids online because I have to work. And that's just a fact for this woman, right? And this is a story that is, or a voice, or a perspective that is challenging the kind of master narrative that we are, you know, expecting from the media during times of crisis. Like for now, we're talking about, you know, the solidarity and the help and all that is very, very important. But the newsrooms that we were talking to, they defined their role as this kind of troublemakers, if you will, or newsrooms that bring perspectives that are unwelcomed or controversial or contradicting or complementary or missing, and very much rooted in the idea that this is the media's responsibility to give voice to people who are minorities or are underrepresented or are somehow facing repercussions because of the way that they are portrayed in the media. And so when the situation started, they did have problems or like felt inadequate in a way to bring competing, complementary or diverse perspectives into this moment of the kind of master narrative, you know, like we are solidarity, we are working together, and this. So stories that were breaking out about mistreatment of black migrants from Ukraine at the borders were not very much welcomed. Stories that were trying to talk about Russians being harassed in Poland, you know, or their stores or their restaurants destroyed were not welcomed, because that was all seen as being anti-Polish, like, you know, that so they felt a lot of pressure to sort of mute and censor themselves from bringing this kind of like not complementary, but just different perspectives, like so to have like the full picture of, you know, what's the war, what does it mean to have a crisis like this for everybody, you know? So this story about the woman, it's not so traumatic. I mean, it is in a way, because she probably maybe wanted to stay in Ukraine, but she said that she has to be here because then she can work. And she was a tourist guide in Ukraine, so she couldn't do that work there. So, like, of course, there's so many stories like this of the whole life changed and uprooted, but sometimes because these angles are sort of twisting the narrative that is expected from the media, that kind of one master narrative, it becomes challenging. So the article that we did is kind of comparing what media diversity editorial practices, because we're doing it at the editorial level, talking to journalists, what it means for them and what they can do, what strategies they have, and so on. So we kind of compare this, the field work that we've collected before the war, after the war, and 1 year after the war. And kind of seen how they kind of go back to the normalcy, let's say, or their role, that they pick up the missing stories, or they feel more comfortable with challenging some of the things that have been said or haven't been said. One of the stories that was picked up late by the media in Poland was rape on women in Ukraine by the soldiers, from Russian soldiers, and this was postponed for some time. Already the Western media were writing about it, but the Polish media were late because they were lacking resources. They said that they were afraid to publish because they didn't have underground journalists that could confirm it. You know, it was like fear of being exposed to fake news or reproducing something that hasn't been verified. So that also, that is kind of like a flip coin of this diversity, right? Yeah. So that they fallen back on the professional journalistic standards when it comes to, so we also had this reflection that for some time in the beginning of the project, we thought that diversity is very much ideological in the way it has been discussed in Poland. It was argued through a moral stance, like human rights and so on, but also there was a component of like this, very liberal values that we need to bring to the discussions in the media. And sometimes to the sort of point of being like confusing or controversial. I don't know, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but when that happened, the crisis happened, they fell back on their traditional standards of professionalism, which I think is also good, right? Yeah. Because that's what we expect from the media, accuracy and all that. But they nevertheless wanted to pick up these stories that were missing on the fringes of the master narrative, and that eventually, within a year, maybe they managed, or maybe not a year, but some months, they managed to go back to,
Okay, thank you. I can see that there are people waiting to get in. I mean, don't be shy. Come, there are a lot of places up here, up front, so come in. It's very kind of you and sensitive to wait until there is a break. There are plenty of places up in the first rows here, so. Okay, so you mentioned sort of fake news and disinformation, and I mean, one important aspect is, of course, to get accurate information. I mean, you were communicating on Facebook, the platform, and journalists have their own sort of communication criteria, and I don't know how you communicate with your teachers, but and there are also, of course, information flows that goes between the city of Warsaw and the government, etc. So what role could we say something about what role had this information? Was that a major issue here? That the problems with verifying information, etc. Is that?
But what kind of information you mean?
Yeah, all kinds actually. I mean, the information necessary for managing this crisis. I mean, you of course are confronted with probably news that depicts things that you are doing not in the way that you would agree to.
Well, yeah, I mean, but when it comes to access to information, so from day one, actually, just we were building, some, translating also to Ukrainian. There was a problem with Russian because some people expected us only to communicate in Ukraine, but I mean, there was a huge part of Ukraine actually who were Russian speakers. Yes, yeah. So it has to be both Russian and Ukraine, actually. So we are, presenting this information just and also, finding, because it was. Like, again, I mean, for the first time, we're confronted with, not only with such a, big wave of people coming to the city, but also with such, special needs, yes? Basically, just when you come from, when you come to work here, just you more or less know what is the city, just how to operate, you got your relatives, yes? So that was number one. The other issue was, of course, information and data that would, that was showing actually what's going on in the city, and that was a big problem. Because, as I said, I mean, the government, they just opened up the border without actually even, counting these people coming. Yes, so we had our own estimates, and it was, like, there were, like, people in the city hall in Kiev, calling us, saying, okay, there is another train coming to you, there are so many people on board, so many with disabilities, like wounded people. They were giving us this information, so we knew that before it came, because it took like 48 hours, yes, just to get to Warsaw. So we're like prepared, okay, in saying, okay, we can get these people, or no, we are full in hospital, so why don't you send, this train to Krakow on Wrocław, yes, but this is the kind of a thing which we're coordinating between, Warsaw and Kiev, and not from the central, government, yes.
Okay.
So we're calling him Przemyśl and saying just, don't send any train to us. We're full. There is no planes physically. There is no, there are no free platforms, Polish, in Warsaw railway stations just to absorb new trains coming just. Why don't you send them somewhere else? And they say, okay, yeah, we can send them, somewhere else. Yeah, they were sent to Krakow, yes. But of course, most of the people, they wanted to go to Warsaw, yes, and not some other cities. And of course, there was a huge chaos. We didn't know, so we are collecting like kind of a building of system of collection of information data from the hospitals. So we knew how many people we got in hospitals, how many kids were born. We knew that we had like every day there were reports by different departments of the City Hall with reporting the number of volunteers, of people coming, and so this is the system which actually my department organized. And then of course we had, and this is one of the thing which Maria mentioned with big companies. One of the big company actually started to share its data on debit cards with us, because the first thing after like 2 weeks, after 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, the mayor asked me, well, do we know how many people we got in the city? Yes. Because it smells like a humanitarian crisis, and we don't know how many we have, how many may come, yes. And of course, well, we have our estimates, and that was before people, registered officially with PESEL, so you didn't have, like real numbers. And one of the companies, they get in touch with us, and they were doing estimation for over a month on the number of debit cards which were registered in Ukraine, and they were vanishing from the Ukrainian system and popping up in Warsaw and the adjacent areas. So big tech kind of thing, just they got us for free, and that was the basis on which we could tell, okay, so this is the scale, this is the number, these are the trends, yes, so we know that if the trend goes up, or the trend is stable, or it goes down, yes, and that was, so on different many fronts, and also with there were a lot of like international migration organization, UN agendas, they were coming to city and actually coming to us, the mother part saying, do you know how many people we have? Because no one actually just knew how many people are there, yes. Then of course there was this with telecoms, collecting data, so that was, again, something which was not kind of in public, but behind the scenes, but that was one of the key problems, yes, until the government decided that people may register. They adopted this special bill on Ukrainian refugees, and from that moment on, so it was March, like late March, I guess, we kind of, had more insights. Okay, so where are those people? Just who are their people? Yes, that there are women, which age, because they registered. Yes, so we got all the raw data, and we could build. And for instance, we knew that how many kids we have in the school duty, and for instance, we knew that many of them got missing, actually, and still, yes. We have only 10,000 of Ukrainian kids registered with our schools, yes. And that was, I guess, one of the big mistakes with the government committed, that they, unlike the German government, who said, well, there is a school duty.
Oh, yeah.
And you can access the Ukrainian online education system, that's fine. But there is a school duty. So if you registered in Germany, you have to go to school. The Polish government was soft on that. And the thing is that around half of the kids who are registered in Warsaw, they got missing. We don't know where they are, because they are not attending our schools. We don't know whether they attend the Ukrainian online system, whether they still. So, that's one of the lessons learned for the future. Yes, that, you improvise, you have to deal with the crisis, but then actually you really have to start thinking systematically, because you create problems. And those kids are different age. They should be attending schools. We don't know if they are or not.
Yeah, thank you. Maria, you...
So, once again, thank you for that. I completely agree with you. And what I can add is that what I learned at university, in this building, because I used to study here, is that the information is the most important thing and the most precious thing. And actually that was just the knowledge, but I proved it to myself during that difficult time. and I realized that the information is really the most important, because because of the information from the Ukraine, from the border, from the train and bus stations, we could manage the refugees point like Torvar, Ilmet, and other. So that was important, but also the information that we produced to other people help us, because we've got this help from the outside, from the business, right? But we need to be very concrete that we need the amount of, I don't know, food, whatever. We also, because of the communication between our points, we could share the food, the goods we have. So that was very important to be very concrete, and during that time, as you imagine, there was lots of fake news. That was a huge problem. Like, for example, we had that situation that some of our refugees heard that in Germany there is a refugee camp and they wanted to stay in Warsaw because they were afraid about this German camp, maybe because of the history, I don't know, but they were terrified, so they stayed. So yeah, during that time we realized that the information is the most the precious thing. So.
Yeah. So yeah, that sounds like the sort of rumors can spread quite quickly. Is this something that you also, Maryna, has confronted?
Well, as a representative of the project which deals with disinformation all the time, I think my answer can be long, but I would try to make it shorter. I think that we should distinguish. One thing is misinformation and lack of information, and it was discussed partly yesterday, when it in general was a challenge for journalists both in Ukraine and abroad to cover what is going on. The speed was really fast, and social media played a big role, where was sharing just all kind of information. So I think that this is one thing. Another thing is disinformation, so it's political disinformation. And here we talk about Russian and pro-Russian channels of information. Because the war we have now, actually, in terms of the information and aims of spreading information by the aggressor, is the same as it was during the First World War, Second World War. It's the main objective is to justify aggression, is to undermine support by the partners, and if we talk about the disinformation, Russian disinformation, which targets Ukrainians, the message is quite clear: stop fighting. And they are doing it in different ways. The most probably the most popular and unfortunately sometimes successful way is to find divisions in the society and try to deepen this division. So this can be between the internally displaced Ukrainians and host communities. If we talk about Europe and Russian disinformation there, of course, for each country it would be different narratives, depending on the political context and number of refugees. But in general, the point is to undermine public support and to show Ukraine as a threat, refugees as a threat. And I think that we don't have underestimate these Russian disinformation efforts, because this is not just fake news and some false information. This is complicated things. This is narratives which can spread in the entertainment content, in the YouTube videos, or in the funny pictures like in memes, or even in the video games. And that is why to deal with it, it is more complicated. It's not enough just to learn the rules, like this is truth, this is fake information. I think that here actually the academic research is very important, because we need to study these narratives, and also then to bridge the academic research with communicators, to communicate it to the wider audience, how they can be influenced. Because now, unfortunately, is that moment when Russia understands that many people in Ukraine are tired, and Europeans can be tired too to help Ukrainians. And I think that now that is that moment when disinformation and propaganda efforts can be more active.
Greta, was the question of disinformation, misinformation, fake news, etc., was that sort of high on the agenda for the journalists that you did research on?
Oh yes, of course, and on many levels also. I would say that they were dealing with the same things that you mentioned people were dealing, which is the fake news, disinformation, propaganda, lack of resources, lack of time, not knowing where to look for news, where to find the relevant information. But they were there was also this sentiment that they were sort of left without allies, the media, because there were some stories during that time that there were lay people, Polish people, who were doing some stands to challenge the credibility of the media and to see if they will pass on a fake news. And there was some kind of celebrity who faked his death, and they put it on, they disseminated it, and they were criticized and challenged that they were lame. That they're not able to do their work properly. And this was like a personal frustration, saying that there's a lack of understanding of the civil society of what the journalists are dealing with, that they are people like anybody else, working 24/7 around the clock, trying to verify, deliver the news accurately, and still they are being challenged with some stupid stands like this, if they spread fake news that is just completely random. But on another level, they did, most of the newsrooms we spoke to stopped using scooping or searching or scouting, as they said, social media for stories. So that was also a change that happened. So they said they went into the field. So the tools that they used before, surveys on Instagram, for example, amongst the readers, suddenly became what you call it? I forgot this English word, but
unreliable.
Unreliable, yeah. Or you didn't have enough participants, because the answer was one of the stories was that they asked the young people if they would fight if the war broke out in Poland, and most of them said no. And so they made a story out of this survey, and this pissed off everybody, and they became a story. They became a story. How they dare to put a story like this, that this is anti-Polish and we don't need this story at the moment. So, but at the same time, the idea that, you challenge a certain fake news or certain disinformation was kind of measured with some kind of moral stance or something, I would say, because we have come across this idea that the websites that were created for Ukrainians, and like yesterday you saw that a lot of the media outlets have created websites in Ukraine for Ukrainians, and the editorial freedom was given fully to the Ukrainian side there, and the Polish publisher said that they are aware that this is also part of the information war, and therefore that they accept that there's also propaganda on these websites, Ukrainian propaganda, and that they wouldn't challenge it. So they called it Ukrainian freedom. They write what they need. This is for them. This is their thing, and we're not going to challenge this. But when they wanted to republish on the Polish sites, then they would tone it down, or change the titles, or remove certain, verbs, or, they would take more control. But this has also changed after 1 year, I would say, because they said that they took over the editorial control of these platforms as well, with more changing the editor-in-chief, for example, you know, like taking more rigid approach to information, like, you know, but at that time it was like, you know, accepted as this is that sort of space, and we're not going to challenge this part of the media agenda, you know, if you will. Yeah. So that's also something we have.
Yeah. I'm going to sort of open the floor for questions from the audience as well. But so while you are thinking of questions, I have one last question for the panel. I mean, if you could concisely summarize the main learning outcome of this experiences in connection with the full-scale invasion, what would that be?
Okay, so I can start that. For me, the most important for now is to build a strategy for the future, because what do we know? That we can expect actually everything. Started from pandemic to war. It's like we have to be prepared for everything. And strategy means that we know what we've got, what kind of people are ready to help, who will be the leader, what kind of things we have, like maybe some for the future, some other points that we can stay with the, I don't know, with the refugees, or we can hide ourselves, whatever. We just need to be prepared for the future. This is mine, the most important thing that I want to tell. And
well, I think some lessons are still in the process of learning, but probably for me, what I understood that values are very important, and in the era of the post-truth, truth exists, and I think that Ukrainian fights proved it, because Ukrainians defending their values. And I think this is very important to understand this, because when I have been during this month is traveling and in different countries, I think one of the questions which I was asked sometimes, why do Ukrainians continue to fight for so long time? Like, Russia is very strong and you are losing many people. And I was telling, because we don't have the road back. It's like either we exist or not. So I think that this war for Ukraine showed that we have common values, and we are strong to fight for them. But I think that we will not be able to win without the support of friends, of partners.
No, I think there was only one lesson, I mean, which is not only for Warsaw, but for Poland. I mean, we are a migration country, and we need a migration policy. I mean, one of the key problems we're struggling with now, it's like that we have a different, you know, I mean, there are like, officially, it starts with the public statistics. Officially, there is like, you know, I don't know what, 20-something or 30,000 foreigners living in this city, which is not true, because we know from the social security numbers, so that there is 200,000 foreigners living in the city, paying just the social, you know, insurance every year. Yes, so it starts with actually acknowledging that, you know, that the reality is different than it is being presented. Yes, and secondly, what comes from that is that we need a migration policy. I mean, now one of the key problems which was actually popping up during the crisis was that, well, we have a different status for different migrants in the city, and in Poland basically, yes. Even within Ukrainian group, there are those who came to the city before 24th of February, and they do not enjoy all the allowances and special, you know, rights, and they're the group which came after 24th, yes. Then we have Belarusians, we have Afghani, we have we have thousands of different people, and they ask us, I mean, just why can't we have the same kind of, you know, rights which this group of Ukrainian refugees have, yes? And our answer is, well, we know, but, you know, it was the government who decided that, which is kind of, yes. But now, after 2 years, I mean, it's high time that we have a migration policy, which states actually that, well, that Poland is no longer a country of immigration, but is a country of immigration, that it has its interest in policy in this regard, and then it has rules, standards and everything which are like nationwide, yes, so we can implement them, yes, because now a situation in which like the local authorities are under pressure, which I understand, fully understand, yes, why don't you have your own integration policies, yes, but we cannot do it, just, we cannot promise things we are not allowed to promise, yes, we cannot, you cannot build a migration policy bottom up from local governments to the central level, yes, so this is one of the key, issue that it's time to we have to reset our mindset, acknowledge that the country is different than we believed, and so many people believe it is, and start working to build systemic solutions. Yes, because the problem, as Maria said, it's not going to disappear. It's going to stay for us for the another decade or two. Thank you.
I don't have a very much to say, but I think those who research, and you also, Göran, did research on disruptive media events, know that there's a phase of sort of master narrative, and that we should all be aware of it, and not only in this particular war, but in every other context of war and crime and terror or disasters, should be aware of the sort of challenges and dangers that come with this this phase of allowing basically elites and people in power positions to have their sort of freedom to just set the narrative of everything. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience to the panelists? Now is the time to announce yourself. Yeah, we have one question down there. Yeah.
Thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. I'd like to direct the first question to Maryna and others to pop in as well. But your work with the various actors, can you outline the different kinds of fears that you have observed? Now, there's obviously the one that you mentioned, which is existential. If we've got to keep fighting in Ukraine, otherwise we don't exist. But are there other fears that people have that are being exploited in this mis and disinformation space?
It is a really interesting question. I started to wonder whether I have seen any research on this regarding the fears. I don't think actually this question was ever asked in some kind of sociological research studies, but it would be interesting actually to have a look. I think it's really, from what I see, I think these fears depends on the position of the person. I mean, some characteristics and whether this person belongs to any of the so-called vulnerable groups or other groups. Because, for example, if we speak about defenders and family members of defenders, I think this is like one group of fears related more to the battles. If we speak about people who near the front lines, they also, I think, have fears more related to physical, general, survival. And my guess would be that the farther you from the front line, and if, for example, you don't have family members in the army, then probably your fears would be more related to some economical factors, employment, salary for the elderly people. It is a really big percentage of retirement age people in Ukraine. It would be fears related to their future, because they will not be able to work and to earn money. And but I'm really sure that the majority of Ukrainians would share this fear to be like completely occupied by Russia. Because when I was living Kiev in the first days of the invasion, I don't think that I was motivated like by the fear of the physical like attack. For some reason, I just thought that it would be safe. But my biggest fear was that it would be the occupation regime in the city. And I understood that I'm not ready to live in these circumstances. So I still think that this fear to lose freedom, it would be the top and common for all Ukrainians. And the other, like second, third places, really depends on your position and on your role in the society.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more last questions? No, I think the panelists must have exhausted the topic.
Or except for the audience.
Or the audience, yeah. So, no. Yeah, we have one question here.
Hello, thank you for this interesting discussion, this interesting panel. I have one question about the information flow, since you mentioned at one point that there are fake news spread among Ukrainian refugees, for example, about German refugee camps, or in general. Is there some kind of transnational information flow, like from a governmental level or like on a newspaper level? So how is this organized? Do you know something about it?
Not organized.
And if not, would we need
You cannot
something
control the information and the fake news. Yes, you have to be wise and check the sources every time, and there is no general control on that. I think non-government, on the City Hall of Warsaw can help with that. Maybe some specialists from the university. I don't really know, but the most important always is to check the source, I guess, and checked many times, maybe not only one or twice. Maybe you want to.
Yeah, I think first of all, the social media are fast, and there is no way we can be faster than social media. So the first thing is to come up with all the information before gossip is created, and circulated, because people tend, if they don't know or don't understand, they tend, we know how our brain works, we prefer coherent stories, so we're connecting the dots even if the dots are not there, so that's how we work. So that the first thing was actually to provide as much as accurate information, so there is no way for people to start, developing their own stories. That's number one. I guess, and number two, I hope I could show you, because there is a lot of information on the website of the City Hall, because we're still collecting this information, how many people we have, what is the age and sex structure, but there are some technical problems. Usually just, in such, on such occasions you want to show something and it doesn't work. But anyway, I think one of the problems which we had with social media, and there was a lot of trolling and coming from different sources, that we did our own public opinion polls. So there was a number of stories when the City Hall management just said, well, we heard the stories on Facebook, like for instance that there was a growing tension between Polish and Ukrainian patients, because Polish doctors says that, well, if you're a Ukrainian refugee, you doesn't have to queue, but you just go to the hospital, which was not true, because the standard was from the day one. The mayor said, whatever happened, the quality of life and the standard of service has to be the same. So we do not differentiate between, refugees and inhabitants, because this is how you can create, real social tensions. But there was a lot of those stories. And we conducted like just three opinion polls in a row. And it clearly was that, it's not the case, yes. That, of course, there is always a number of people who are dissatisfied or just they don't like, yes. But overwhelming majority of people, well, yes, yes. We're committed, just we see what you're doing as a city hall. We have no problem with that. We are not afraid of the city getting more, differentiated. All fears related to the, like the security, personal security. Also, we're not there. So I guess whenever you have information, it's good to check. But we check this information, but of course, people, they usually rely on social media unless they get information from first hand, yes. And this is what we wanted to do.
Okay, thank you.
Is there something coordinated between, for example, Warsaw and Berlin? Since you said at some point that Warsaw is a hub, so for whole Europe.
No, it was a hub, not because it was just the idea, but simply just because, most of the people, most people just, they came by, cars or trains to Warsaw, and they were picked up from their families from Western Europe. But no, there was nothing like a coordination because we have different, Germany is a federal structure, yes, so they have their own rules, yes. What was actually coordinated was the assistance, yes. So there is Warsaw is member of, a number of organizations, and also the mayor has very good contacts with different mayors. So we had like coordinating again, but that was just, our political will and the will of our partners, like, from Paris, Vienna, Milano, Berlin, that they were calling, the mayor saying, okay, so what do you need? Shall we send more clothes, or you need money, or you need some more, yes? And then we're just calling, Kiev and Kharkiv and saying just, okay, guys, what you need, yes? Because we got full of clothes, don't send us any clothes, send us money, yes? Okay, so we're collecting money, yes? So that was how it worked, yes? But it was nothing like, official coordination. It was very much on a personal level. So mayors' contacts and also the mayors of different, capitals who were interested. There was also a kind of a summit of free cities, of Pact of the Free Cities, which Warsaw is a founding member, and there was another, cities from Ukraine joining it. So there was, again, it was like a mass appraising, bottom up, with a lot of, coordination, which was taken, case by case. Yes. So when there was a problem, you just sought for solutions. So you didn't waste your time having this, big master plan just, and after 6 months you eventually have your plan, but the crisis is gone. Yes. So that was not what we would like it to have. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, and please join me in a big hand to the panelists. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for this very interesting panel, and now it's time to coffee. So we meet downstairs to coffee break, and then we start at 11 our parallel workshop session.